Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. We have legal experts in for Team Rising to weigh in on the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. Plus, Batya Ungar-Sargon is with us to discuss the mysterious disappearance and recent reappearance of Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai. And of course, we'll hear from Kim Iverson on Biden's Build Back Better bill that passed the House last week.
But first, a new report published last week claims that a seafood vendor at a market in Wuhan, China, was the first known case of COVID-19 instead of an accountant who lives several miles away from the market, as previously was reported. So head of the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Arizona, Michael Werrobe, noted that the illness that the accountant reported was likely due to dental problems, followed by actual COVID symptoms, indicating the man was infected through community transmission. And while the World Health Organization endorsed Werrobe's hypothesis, experts say it's not sufficient enough to definitively say how the pandemic began.
Werrobe's theory of the origin of COVID would run counter to the Wuhan lab leak theory, which of course posits that the deadly virus accidentally was leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China, presumably while the facility was conducting some type of gain-of-function research. This comes as Dr. Anthony Fauci made an appearance on MSNBC's Mehdi Hasan show, where he answered questions on gain-of-function research and the funding from the NIH. Let's watch that.
And I want to focus, though, on what The Intercept did. As you know, they obtained documents late this summer, which NBC News has not verified or seen, I should add, but which seem to suggest that the NIH, and you're part of it, did fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan, basically making viruses more dangerous or contagious in order to study them. In May, you testified that the NIH has never done gain-of-function research in Wuhan. The documents don't establish whether you knew about that work or that funding. So I do wonder, what's your response to this Intercept reporting in these documents?
Well, the Intercept reporting is completely misleading because gain of function, Mehdi, is a completely meaningless term unless you put it into context. And what has happened is that years ago, we paused all function on manipulating viruses, which is an absolutely essential part of virology, in order to get certain guard rules and guidelines about what constitutes research that, in fact, might be dangerous and needs special oversight.
So contrary to Fauci's claims that the gain-of-function guidelines were a product of 3 years of deliberation, the NIH actually let EcoHealth write its own guidelines, according to subsequent reporting from The Intercept. And though Fauci may try to dodge those questions, emails we obtained show that the NIH worked with EcoHealth to evade restrictions on bat coronavirus research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So essentially, NIH grant makers said to Peter Daszak, hey, what you're proposing here seems to be gain of function as defined by our own guardrails, which is banned right now. Paused, as they say. So how would you write it so that it wouldn't be subject to these guardrails? And the language that he sent to them wound up in the grant proposal, language that he then violated himself, because what he said is that if he did X, that he would immediately cease the project and would alert the NIH. He did not do that. He continued the research. So what I found most fascinating from Fauci there was his quote where he says that gain of function is, quote, an absolutely essential part of virology. That's not leaving.
If you're on the side of the virus, for the viruses, it's absolutely essential.
Like in 2012, as we've talked about before on the show, he wrote this paper saying we need to acknowledge the public's concerns and the cost benefit of this. And so that there's a gray area around gain of function research. To say that it's an absolutely essential part of virology isn't leaving a whole lot of wiggle room.
Right. And
like he's clearly a partisan in this argument.
Yeah, and I wonder how he would even defend the idea that it's essential, because what aspect of the gain of function process of making these viruses more powerful, more deadly, more contagious, more infectious, what did we learn from that, or what did we get from that scientific process that has made us better able to prevent pandemics? Right. No one has been able to say. What we may have gotten from it is the pandemic itself. And I'm not. So now we're hearing that. So the wet market as an origin theory gets a little bit stronger from this, or maybe considerably stronger. But we still don't know. It still could be a case that the wet market was a it clearly was a super spreader event.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean it originated
Where did
there.
that guy get it?
Exactly. And we saw that with I can't remember with that woman. I feel like I can't remember which country she was in, but she went to that buffet and she ended up dying. Mm-hmm. It was in some South Asian country. It might have been China, or I can't quite remember where. But she returned from China to elsewhere, and then she went to a buffet, and like so many, you can trace how many people she got so many people sick. So that could have been the story of what happened at the wet market, and that person got it from somewhere else. Right. We don't know yet.
Right. No. Yeah. Right. And we still need to learn more about people in and around the lab who when did they get COVID, or when did they have COVID-like symptoms. It's interesting to see the WHO being like, all right, checks that box.
But they were like, shoo.
Thank you.
Thank goodness.
Thank you for finally giving something to us that we can hang our hat on and move on from this. But yes, you're right. It doesn't completely solve the question here.
Yeah, the mainstream reporting on this has been, the Wall Street Journal's piece was, I thought, uncharacteristically very decisively in favor of the wet market. They were like, yeah, these cases were near where like some kind of dog raccoon was being sold. So case closed.
Right, yeah,
like,
there you go.
Why is that case closed? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right? Did you test the dog and the raccoon?
Right.
Like, if you've done that, then okay. If you said, okay, look.
Yeah.
We have identified COVID in these types of animals. These animals were near. Okay.
Fine.
All right. Now you're talking about that's not. They're just saying they were near animals.
Right.
Which again is playing on a little bit of prejudice, American prejudice, about country bumpkins in China, who were like always eating bat soup and like living with animals.
And yet that is the theory that good, non-racist, anti-racist liberals are supposed to accept, rather than the lab one.
Right, and Wuhan
That's the racist one.
Wuhan's a city of 20 plus million people, far more sophisticated than probably most American cities, less grimy than most American cities. And so it doesn't really fit the kind of vision there.
So this comes as Fauci warns against a COVID surge over the holidays, as a 30% rise in cases has been seen over the last week. Just cases. Infections are still under 100,000 daily cases, while almost 200 million Americans fully vaccinated. Despite the high vaccination rates, 2021 COVID deaths have doubled compared to 2020's death rate. On Sunday, deaths due to the pandemic hit 770,000. In 2020, the death count totaled 385,000. And though New England has the highest vaccine rate in the U.S. at nearly 70% of residents received at least one dose, the most recent surge has been there and in Michigan, which has a 54.2% vaccination rate.
And on the issue of boosters, Fauci took to CNN where he explained when a third jab may be required to be considered fully vaxxed. Let's watch.
Does the definition of what constitutes fully vaccinated need to change now to include a booster shot?
We're going to follow that very carefully, Dana, and that's what we say, that's what we mean when we say we let the science and the data follow. So we're going to take a look right now at what the durability is of the booster, and we're going to follow people who get boosted. We don't know right now. You have to be perfectly transparent and honest. We're going to be doing the best we can to keep the American public optimally protected. If that means that that's going to be a boost that will absolutely everyone will have to have, then so be it. We'll do it that way, but it will be guided by the science. And people should not be put off by the fact that as time goes by and we learn more and more about the protection, that we might modify the guidelines. That's what we've been saying all along, by follow the science. Things change and you have to follow the data.
Cases are probably rising in Michigan because it's getting, I lived in Michigan for the first 25 years of my life. It gets cold around now. Yeah. People are going inside. We've seen this. We know the seasonality of COVID means that you'll have these spikes in the American Southwest, Florida, Texas, Arizona throughout the summer, and then in the fall it moves north, it moves northeast. We saw this. This is exactly what we saw last year. So it's I don't know how anyone could still be surprised by this exact same trajectory of the virus we saw last year.
Right, and on the question of more deaths this year than last year, I forget which virologist said this, but one of the more haunting things that I heard about this pandemic, he said this, I think, at the end of 2020. He's like, I'm not terribly worried about COVID 2021. What I'm worried about is COVID 2022 and COVID 2023. Because even as we've seen vaccination rates get to whatever percentage we're at now, which very much cuts down the death rate among the elderly population, which was the bulk of the people who got hit in 2020. Because Delta is so much massively more infectious,
right,
and just could infect several times more people than Alpha. You just see it tearing through the country, and hopefully Delta's the end of it. But with this virus, you never know what it's going to switch into.
It has surprised us over and over again. Hopefully no unfortunate surprises still in the mix, but we'll have to see. And we'll tell you what's on our radars coming up next.